Hello everyone, welcome to another in the studio. Glad to have you. I'm working on a project here, and this particular track has a repeating bass stab or accent hit that plays every 2 bars. And what I want to show you is how I've set up various LFOs and automation to make this particular sound interesting throughout the entire track. If I was just to leave it as is, it would become very repetitive and very boring very quickly. And that's not what I want. So I'm going to let you listen to this so you have some context, and then I'll walk you through how I've set up all the programming. So here we go. Okay, I think you get the idea here. And most of the elements are muted, so we can focus on this bass accent or stab hit. Okay, so let's just dive in here. And we'll start with some of the LFOs. So the first thing I did, let's hop over to this mod X, which is the filter envelope, and that's where most of the magic is happening here. So let's pretend this isn't moving around right now. And the first thing I did was just dial in the filter envelope. So I just adjusted the decay, the sustain, and release so the envelope was at its most closed position. That's where I wanted it to be, at its most closed, point. Once I had that, then I started setting up some LFOs to get it moving around a little bit. So we'll start with the decay. So I just made a simple LFO with a small range, and it's a random waveform at a pretty fast speed. And that's, just as simple as that, just so the decay is kind of moving around a little bit. And then I automated the bass. The bass here, that's going to be where I want it to be at its most closed. But then I automated the bass to slightly ramp up or increase or open up over an 8-bar period, so we get even more variation. And then I did some work with the sustain and the attack as well. So let's have a look at the sustain. Again, another LFO, and this one isn't on all the time. This one I'm turning on and off. So again, it's another random waveform here on the LFO with a fairly fast speed. And all the speeds are slightly different. Some are in sync and some are not in sync. But you can see here that every other hit, I turn on the LFO for the sustain, so we get a little bit of random movement with, again, a small range, only a couple percentages every other hit. And again, I did pretty much the same thing with the attack as well, but even, again, a random waveform, extremely subtle small range here that only happens every other hit. And those changes, especially these two, are quite subtle, but I think they really add up in the end. Nothing I'm doing here is, really heavy-handed or in your face, but I think all these little bit of all these little things add up to something interesting in the end. Okay, so we have movements with the decay, the sustain, and the attack. And then what I did was I actually set up an LFO for the filter amount. So again, I found the point where I wanted the filter amount to be at its lowest point with the least amount of high end. And then I gave this a random LFO as well with, maybe around 10 to 15% on the range. And then I did the same thing I did with the decay. I'm opening that up slowly over an 8-bar period. So not one of these hits are going to be exactly the same, was my goal here. Okay, so that's all the LFOs in action. But then I went a little bit further and I used a delay to add a little extra excitement here. So I used the H delay, which is one of my go-tos. A simple 8th dotted setting, but originally I had it on ping pong, and I thought it might be interesting to only engage the ping pong on certain hits. So when we get that nice wide ping pong back and forth, it has more impact because it's only, you know, being applied to certain hits. So you can hear that happening here. The first one has it, and then we just get a normal 8th dotted delay, no ping pong. Then we get it again. And I thought that worked quite nice, only having certain hits have the wide ping pong action and the other ones just a normal delay. So I'm doing that as well, which I thought worked in this particular case. And then I always recommend EQing your delays and reverbs. And this one's nice because it has a filter built into it. So I rolled off the low end, which I just didn't need. And then I'm doing a little automation with the low pass filter here. So it starts fairly low, and then we just get a little bit more high frequency content coming in up to this point, and then it just drops away again. And I think that also just adds a little something to this sound, a little extra, depth. So all these little bits of movement, I think, really add up to something quite interesting. And then if I wanted to give it more variation in the arrangement, I can use, I could even, after I bounce it out to audio, I can filter it again if I wanted to. I can use my send return effects tracks to give it, something extra if I want to. But yeah, let's double check here. I think I may have detuned a couple of these hits as well by 10 to 20 cents here. Yeah, it looks like a few of these hits are just slightly detuned as well, just kind of randomly. Some are pitched down 10 cents, up, 10 cents, down 20 cents, so on and so forth. Yeah. So that's how I set up, some LFOs and automation for this bass stab to keep it interesting. I hope that was useful for you, especially on sounds like this where it's just repeating and it's just one note. You really need to put some effort into giving it some variation, some movement. It'll get super stale, super stagnant really quick if you don't. So you really get what you put in to these type of sounds. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Hopefully you took something away from it. Leave me a comment or question. I do love to hear from everyone, and I'll catch you soon. Take care.